The views expressed are solely those of the speaker and not necessarily those of Paltalk.com, AVM Software, or its advertisers.
News Talk is online. News Talk Online is a production of Paltalk.com, the largest multimedia interactive program on the internet with more than 4 million unique users on demand on iTunes and on YouTube and on my blog, GaryBaumgarten.com, where you can post your comments, whether you agree with yours truly or not. You can also subscribe to my Twitter feed, twitter.com/GaryBaumgarten, where you can get all the information on all the news that you need to know to make yourself an informed chatter here on Paltalk. And thanks to our good friends at CRN Digital Talk Radio, we're syndicated to an additional 12 million households. I am your host, Gary Baumgarten. I welcome you to the show. Well, I've got late-breaking news for you. There are more mass executions planned for Iran. And by the way, let me just tell you, as we bring you this news, we're only hearing a small scintilla of the news coming out of Iran. We know that there is a prison where no one is allowed in, no International Red Cross observers, no United Nations observers, to see what's going on, where we believe that other people have been executed. We know that over the weekend, a 19-year-old man who was held for longer than 20 days, was dead for longer than 20 days, shot on the streets, was finally turned over to his parents. They didn't tell them for 25 days the whereabouts of their son. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Do I sound like I've about had it with this regime? I have. I've about had it with the rest of the world, the governments of the world, for not putting the squeeze on them right now economically. Now is the time to do so. Amnesty International has issued an urgent appeal to the government of Iran to stay the executions of 14 Baluchi rebels tomorrow. In addition, Amnesty International has compiled a list of the names or identities of 368 people arrested in Iran since June the 12th. Some of those detained have since been released, but may face prosecution in the future. The organization has also obtained photographs of lists of cases under judicial review, which indicate the scale of arrests in Tehran in recent weeks. While it is not possible to individually confirm each name received, Amnesty International is publishing them to draw attention to the suffering of thousands of families in Iran whose family members may have been arrested arbitrarily or who ignore the whereabouts of arrested family members who have virtually been subjected to enforced disappearances. They're coming into people's homes and grabbing people. Is basically what's happening, in addition to the ones that are being snatched off the street. AI argues that the Iranian authorities have a responsibility to immediately disclose the identity of anyone in their custody and to inform their families of their whereabouts. GB, Gary Baumgarten, agrees with AI, Amnesty International, on this. Amnesty International is concerned that many of those still detained are at risk of torture and other ill treatment, possibly to extract forced confessions which could be used against them in courts. I mean, everything they're doing there is extrajudicial. Everything they are doing there is against human rights. Everything they are doing there in the name of religion is against their own religion. And this is how they treat the people there. And what are we doing? We're no better than the United Nations. I mean, us collectively, the world communities. Debate societies talking about it. I'm not one who's in favor of long-term economic sanctions against countries, because ultimately the people of those nations are the ones who suffer. But right now, at this moment of vulnerability, at this moment when the world has seen the atrocities committed by a government against its people, it's time to put an economic squeeze on the government of Iran, the horrible government of Iran, the extrajudicial, illegal government of Iran, the terrorist government of Iran, We already know they export terrorism elsewhere. Now we see how they terrorize their own people. Now's the time to put the squeeze on them to at least force some decency, some human rights changes, and some international observers in there, not only to observe the human rights issue, but to let the inspectors back in to see what they're doing with their nuclear development. It's a serious problem. And all they do is talk about it around the world. It's disgusting. Something should be done about it. Jim in Michigan. Jim, welcome to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Okay, Gary, thank you very much. I think you're entirely correct, but I don't think an economic blockade is going to work for all the defiance that they're doing right now. We've got to get action. We've got to get ships out there. We have to physically be there. I think the time for Obama to wait to move has passed. Action should be held now.
Well, Jim, I don't think the Iranian people want the United States military involved in their internal problems, but I would say that putting a NATO blockade around Iran so no goods can get in and no goods can get out would be an appropriate thing to do. Because not only would it force them to wake up to the fact that they have no economic support from the rest of the world, but it would also stop the development of the nuclear program. They can't ship the goods in. I guess they could fly stuff in and out. I guess they could still do that. But, maybe that has to be curtailed somehow as well. I don't know. Cassandra, the United Kingdom. Cassandra, welcome to News Talk Online on Paltalk.com.
Thanks, Gary. Well, Amnesty International have spoken out at last. Where were Amnesty International when these people were running through the streets? We had almost 3 weeks of the people being beaten on the streets, and only now do they come to the come to a full realization of it. And where is the United Nations in this? We know very well that Ahmadinejad has every intention of going to the United Nations and grandstanding at the first meeting of the General Assembly in September, I think it is. Why don't the United Nations take a solid stance about things and say, sorry, we cannot, because you contravene the very basis of what we're supposed to be standing up for, which is human rights. We suspend your membership of the United Nations. I mean, I'm not sure that would do anything for the people in Iran, but at least it's sending a strong message to the regime to say that, I'm sorry, that what you're doing is totally and utterly unacceptable. Thank you.
Oh, sadly, there will be nations that applaud Ahmadinejad in September. I think September 15th, the opening session of the United Nations General Assembly begins. Sadly, there will be those who support